Here's how to make Ray's lightsaber. And just make things interesting, let's say out of cardboard. You're a madman! Okay, so that looks a lot like it's the top of Ray's staff. So you could very easily cut up a toy staff and repaint it if you already have one, but I don't, and I don't think that my patrons would be too thrilled with me if I did that. Another option is to 3D print the top half of the staff and just stop, but that's not useful to people without a 3D printer. So I'm going to be using these household materials, trying to lower that threshold, let as many people do this project as possible. Started with a cardboard tube and collected things that would go over it, thus forming the various saber modules. Let's just call them modules. Like this Easter egg and these mouthwash lids. Also some poly washers left over from my very first lightsaber build 8 years ago. People still watch that video and think it's current. And it's like, you're yelling at a teenager in 2012. He can't hear you, nor does he care. First, I traced and cut holes in all the parts so that they would fit snugly over the tube. Started with the razor pen to cut those, and then refined the cut with my rotary tool and a sanding drum attachment. As I finished each module, I slid them over the hilt, one by one, including this slip joint poly washer. It would have been more convenient for me if I had 3 of these, so if you have your heart set on using them, when you go to the hardware store in the plumbing section, buy 3, because that's the number that I would have liked to have used. Maybe even 5, so I'm not sure you need them on the cones. Hey, it's up to you. I cut the ends off of the mouthwash lids and secured them in place with hot glue. I used scrap craft foam for the other details, and I slid those over the saber hilt, securing them with hot glue for the foam parts and super glue for the last plastic poly washer, just because felt like hot glue wouldn't hold that. The pipe was a little long, so I trimmed it with my razor pen. I added the details on the end cones using strips of thin craft foam and super glue. I'm swapping out the glues here because when you're using bits of foam that's this small, the heat from the hot glue will mess it up, and even if it doesn't, the physical mass of it will become a problem and it'll look terrible, so hence super glue. And it looks like I forgot to film it, but I filled in a lot of the cracks and gaps with quick seal. When those were securely in place, I cut off the excess with scissors. I cut an opening for the control greebly button thing. It's a greebly. I cut that greebly out of scrap foam, this time from a foam floor mat because I needed the added depth. Then I refined the edges on my belt sander. Could use the rotary tool, but the belt sander's faster. I tried cutting the panel lines into it, but that just chewed it up, so guess it's time to replace that blade. I ended up using a rotary disc to both cut the trenches and erase my mistake. Then I painted the whole thing gloss black. I held this piece in place with toothpicks, just so it wouldn't slide around on me. Then I moved on to the hilt. So flat black may have been a bit more accurate to what we see on screen, but gloss will really make the metallic parts pop later. I carefully painted the inside of the hilt just so that it wouldn't read as cardboard in close-up shots. While that dried, I worked on the crystal chamber. The basic chamber is made out of a model rocket engine housing left over from, it was a ZF1 build, the little yellow rocket sticking out of it. And for the crystal, I actually make and sell Kyber crystals in my Etsy store for exactly this purpose. So link below if you like either of these designs. So I just used one of my own Kyber designs for the yellow crystal, lit it up with an LED. If you use a more traditional flashlight bulb, like a maglite bulb, then it'll come out looking yellower than that, but it's totally up to you. Then I slid the crystal into the chamber and the chamber into the hilt. Now that the paint is dry, I held the LED in place with a little foam circle offcut from, I don't even know, maybe the DRDs? Yeah, found a way to get the DRDs in the video. It's gonna be in every video. It's hard to see from the reference images available to me right now as I'm building this, but it looks like the ends are very tarnished steel and the middle is corroded bronze. So I'm gonna go over the edges with silver and bronze rub and buff. It's a metallic finish, which will give it a weathered look. If you live in a very hot climate, you might just want to dry brush it with metallic paint though, because sometimes rub and buff will reactivate. I've got some props where it's lasted a decade and other props where it doesn't last the shoot. So think about how the prop is going to be used while you're choosing what materials to build it out of. Normally I do saber blades in post because I don't like walking around conventions with an unwieldy prop, but I know from experience that everybody wants to see a practical blade, so let's give it a shot. What I'm doing right now is making a budget practical blade because I can't afford the LED blades. If you'd like to see that, then you can head on over to my Patreon page. In the meantime, these people are supporting me enough to get me this far, so I thought I'd try the method that was used in the 70s, which is within my budget. Basically, I'm using highly reflective safety vest material, which under a bright enough light, such as movie set lights or camera flash bulbs, will look like a fully ignited lightsaber. This is just a piece of balsa wood, which is why I thought it was going to break 9,000 times. I put a motor in there to make the blade blade oscillate in brightness, further selling the effect. Oh, by the way, that's why everybody wears pouches on their belt in Star Wars. Partially for sound equipment, but also battery packs for the motors and the lightsabers. Now here's just with the blade, the spinning effect off. That's how it looks with that frame rate. So I would actually recommend this if you're just going to a convention, because it'll look like, okay, you have a cloth blade in your lightsaber hilt, but if they take a photo and you got it angled right, it'll look like fire. It's amazing. It'll look like an absence of matter and they're staring into the sun. So yeah, it's how to make Rey's lightsaber out of cardboard and safety vests. Alright, now back to building an alien. But first, what's your favorite lightsaber in Star Wars? Let me know in comments below. Thanks for watching, subscribe, check out the past builds. I don't even know how many lightsaber builds I have. Too many. Nonsense! No such thing as too many. It's starting to smell like a house fire. An elegant weapon for a more civilized time. When we cut people in half with fire swords! You were the chosen one!